The great hall of the Galactic Council Station was quiet except for the soft hum of the air recyclers. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the human section, watching as the other species talked among themselves. His dark blue uniform was simple. Compared to the fancy robes and armor worn by the other ambassadors, humans had only been part of the galactic community for 30 years, and they were still seen as newcomers. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and steady gray eyes. He had fought in the Mars Colony War before becoming a diplomat. Now he represented Earth and all human colonies at these meetings. Most of the time, the other species ignored him. Today felt different, though. The massive doors at the far end of the hall opened with a deep rumble. What came through made even the oldest ambassadors sit up straight. It was a Vextai, but not like any Jake had seen before. The insect-like alien was badly hurt. His green exoskeleton was cracked in several places, and one of his 4 wings was torn and hanging useless. Dark blue blood dripped from cuts on his arms. This was Ambassador Creolock, the leader of the Vextai people. Jake had met him before at trade meetings. The Vextai were known as peaceful farmers and traders. They grew food that fed half the galaxy and never started fights with anyone. Seeing Creolock like this was shocking. The wounded ambassador walked slowly to the center of the hall. His movements were stiff and painful. When he reached the speaking circle, he fell to his knees. The sound of his exoskeleton hitting the metal floor echoed through the chamber. I come before this council not as a representative of the Vextai Trade Federation, Creolock said, his voice shaking. I come as a survivor. I come begging for help. Chairman Zorthak, an ancient reptilian with scales that had turned silver with age, leaned forward on his high throne. Speak, Ambassador. What has happened to your people? Creolock's compound eyes reflected the lights of the chamber as he began his story. 3 months ago, the Korthmor Horde entered our space. We thought they would pass through like they always do. We were wrong. They stopped at our outer colonies and began attacking. The hall grew even quieter. Everyone knew about the Korthmor Horde. They were nomadic warriors who traveled from system to system, taking what they needed and moving on. They were brutal, but usually only stayed in one place for a few weeks. They are not just raiding us, Creolock continued. They are consuming us, world by world, system by system. They take our people and use them as food. They strip our planets bare and turn them into bases for more attacks. Ambassador Valtara of the Altarian Federation, a blue-skinned humanoid with silver hair, spoke up. How many systems have you lost? 17, Creolock whispered. 17 full systems. Over 3 billion of my people are dead or taken. Our military was not built for this kind of war. We are farmers and traders, not soldiers. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. 3 billion dead was a number that made even the most experienced diplomats pause. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had seen war before, but nothing on this scale. What do your military advisors say? Asked Ambassador Thexan of the Crystalline Collective. His crystal body rang like a bell when he moved. Our military is gone, Creolock said simply. We had defense fleets for each system. The Korthmor destroyed them all in the first week. Our ground forces lasted longer, but they had no chance against Korthmor warriors. A single Korthmor soldier can tear through a squad of our people. Jake had seen recordings of Korthmor warriors. They were massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with thick armor-like skin and claws that could cut through metal. They fought with a savage intensity that most civilized species found disturbing. We estimate the Horde has over 200 million warriors, Creolock continued. They have weapons that can crack planets. Their ships are built for one purpose, total war. They will not stop until every Vextai is dead or enslaved. Chairman Zortheka's tail twitched, a sign of deep thought. What exactly are you asking of? This council? Military intervention, Creolock said. We need ships, soldiers, weapons. We need someone to fight the Korthmor while we evacuate our remaining people. We will give anything in return. Our trade networks, our agricultural technology, our entire treasury. We just need time to save what is left of our species. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Jake looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on every face: reluctance. Fighting the Korthmor horde was not something any species wanted to do. Ambassador Veltara was the first to speak. The Altarian Federation sympathizes with your situation, but we cannot commit our forces to such a distant conflict. Our own borders require constant defense. The Crystalline Collective also cannot help, Vexan added. The Korthmor use sonic weapons that can shatter our people. We would be sending our soldiers to certain death. One by one, the major powers gave their excuses. The Void Walkers claimed they were dealing with pirates in their territory. The Thermal Empire said they were in the middle of a civil war. The Aquatic Alliance said their ships were not built for combat in Vextai space. Jake watched as hope died in Creoloc's compound eyes. The Vextai ambassador's shoulders slumped as each rejection came. By the time the last major power had spoken, he was openly weeping, his tears mixing with the blood from his wounds. Then we are all dead, Creoloc said quietly. My people, my children, my entire civilization will be nothing but food for the horde. I came here believing that the great powers of the galaxy would help those in need. I was wrong. Chairman Zorthak began to speak about sending medical supplies and offering refugee status to any Vextai who could escape. It was a kind gesture, but everyone knew it was not enough. The Korthmor would hunt down any survivors. Jake felt something burning in his chest. He had seen this before during the Mars Colony War, politicians making excuses while people died. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the chamber, and everyone turned to look at him. Most of the ambassadors seemed surprised that the human was standing. He was not usually part of these discussions. Ambassador Morrison, Chairman Zorthak said, does humanity wish to make a statement? Jake walked to the center of the chamber, his boots clicking on the metal floor. He stopped next to Creoloc, who looked up at him with confusion. The human was not much taller than the Vextai, but he seemed to fill more space. Humanity accepts, Jake said simply. The chamber erupted. Ambassadors began talking at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of sound. Chairman Zorthak's tail whipped back and forth as he tried to restore order. Ambassador Morrison, the chairman said when the noise died down. Do you understand what you are saying? The Korthmor horde has over 200 million warriors. They have weapons that can destroy planets. Your species has barely 30 years of space travel experience. Jake nodded. We understand the stakes. This is madness, Ambassador Veltara said. Humanity has what, maybe a few hundred ships? A few million soldiers? You will be sending them to die for nothing. That is our choice to make, Jake replied. Creoloc grabbed Jake's arm with one of his 4 hands. You do not understand. The Korthmor are not like other enemies. They do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They will kill every human they find and use your bodies as trophies. Jake looked down at the wounded ambassador. Ambassador Creoloc, your people asked for help. We are going to help. How? Chairman Zorthak demanded. How can humanity possibly fight an enemy that has defeated every species it has encountered? Jake's gray eyes seemed to grow colder. We will find a way. The chamber fell silent again. There was something in the human's voice that made even the ancient chairman uncomfortable. It was not anger or fear. It was something else. Something that spoke of plans already made and decisions already reached. Very well, Chairman Zorthak said finally. The Council recognizes humanity's acceptance of the Vextai request for aid. May your ancestors forgive us for allowing this. As the session ended and the ambassadors filed out, Jake helped Creoloc to his feet. The Vextai looked at him with something between hope and fear. Why? Creoloc asked. Why would you do this for us? Jake was quiet for a moment. Because someone has to? What neither of them knew was that Jake's simple statement had already been transmitted to Earth. In military headquarters and government offices across human space, alarms were sounding. The largest military mobilization in human history was about to begin. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity decided to help. Image. Description for Leonardo AI. A massive alien council chamber with curved walls and multiple levels of seating. In the center, a wounded insect-like alien with green exoskeleton and torn wings kneels before a tall human man in a dark blue military uniform. Around them, various alien species in colorful robes and armor watch from elevated seats. The lighting is dramatic with blue and purple tones, and the architecture appears futuristic with smooth metal surfaces and glowing panels. The scene conveys tension and desperation, with the human figure standing protectively next to the injured alien ambassador. The message reached Earth exactly 6 hours after Jake Morrison spoke those 2 words in the Galactic Council chamber. In the command center of the Seoul Defense Force, Admiral Ryan Carter stood before a wall of screens that showed star maps, ship positions, and troop movements. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and scars on his hands from his days as a fighter pilot. "Sir, we have confirmation from the council station," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, looking up from her communication. Station. She was young, maybe 25, with short blonde hair and quick eyes that missed nothing. "Ambassador Morrison has committed humanity to military intervention in Vexti space." Admiral Carter nodded. He had been expecting this call. Signal. All fleet commanders. Operation Helping Hand is now active. I want every available ship ready for departure within 72 hours. "Every ship, sir?" Amy asked. "That's over 400 vessels. Every ship," Carter confirmed. "And send word to General Walsh. We're going to need ground forces." In the Marine Command Center 3 floors below, General Susan Walsh was already moving. She was a tough woman with black hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in the Jupiter Station Rebellion and the Asteroid Belt Wars. Now she was planning something much bigger. "How many Marines can we deploy?" she asked her staff. 50,000 combat-ready troops," replied Colonel Danny Brooks. He was a big man with a thick beard who commanded the armored divisions. "Plus support staff, that's about 70,000 total." "Not enough," Walsh said. "The Korthmar have 200 million warriors. We need every advantage we can get." "Ma'am, we could call up the reserves," suggested Major Kim Santos. She was a pilot who led the aerospace wings. "That would give use another 30,000? "Do it," Walsh ordered. "And contact Dr. Turner. We need to know everything about Korthmar biology and tactics." Dr. Alex Turner was in his laboratory when the call came. He was a thin man with thick glasses who studied alien life forms. His lab was filled with specimens from across the galaxy, including some Korthmar tissue samples that had been collected years ago. "The Korthmar are interesting creatures," he told the assembled military leaders via video link. "They're much larger than humans, about 3 meters tall, with thick skin that can stop most conventional weapons. They have enhanced strength and speed, but they have weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" Admiral Carter asked. "They communicate through low-frequency sound waves," Turner explained. "Disrupt those frequencies, and you can break their coordination. They're also vulnerable to certain chemical compounds that affect their nervous system. Can we weaponize that?" General Walsh asked. "Already working on it," Turner replied. "Give me 48 hours, and I'll have sonic disruptors and chemical weapons ready for field testing." While the scientists worked, the military machine of humanity came alive. In shipyards across the solar system, workers loaded weapons and supplies onto warships. The massive dreadnought UES Vengeance was the flagship of the fleet, a kilometer-long monster bristling with guns and missile launchers. Captain Pete Harrison stood on the bridge of the assault ship UES Thunder, watching his Special Forces team prepare for deployment. Harrison was a veteran of dozens of operations, a man who could fight in any environment. His team was made up of the best soldiers humanity had to offer. "Sir, we're receiving updated intelligence on Vexti Prime," reported his communications. "Officer, the planet is under heavy bombardment. Korthmar forces have landed in 12 locations." Harrison studied the tactical display. The Korthmar had surrounded the planet's major cities and were systematically destroying them. Millions of Vextai were trapped with no way to escape. "How long until we arrive?" he asked. 18 hours, sir." "Too long," Harrison muttered, "but we'll make it count." The human fleet that left Sol System was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 400 ships moved in perfect formation, from massive battleships to small fighters. They carried weapons that had been designed specifically for this mission, based on everything humanity knew about the Korthmer. Admiral Carter commanded from the bridge of the UES Vengeance. Beside him stood his tactical officer, Commander Nick Johnson, a man who specialized in naval operations. Johnson had studied every recorded battle involving the Korthmer, looking for patterns and weaknesses. "So we're approaching the edge of Vextai space," Johnson reported. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive Korthmer fleet movements." "How many ships?" Carter asked. "At least 3,000, Johnson replied. "They're arranged in a defensive formation around Vextai Prime?" Carter smiled grimly. "They're expecting us to attack head-on like everyone else has done? Signal the fleet? We're going to show them something new." The Korthmer fleet was arranged in a traditional battle formation, with their largest ships at the center and smaller vessels forming a protective screen. It was a formation that had worked against every enemy they had faced. The Korthmer commander, a massive warrior named Graktul, was confident in his victory. "The humans approach with only 400 ships," his aide reported. "They are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Graktul replied. "Signal all vessels. We will crush them quickly and return to consuming the Vextai." The first sign that something was different came when the human ships suddenly scattered. Instead of forming a battle line, they spread out in all directions, moving in patterns that the Korthmer had never seen before. "What are they doing?" Graktul demanded. Before anyone could answer, the human ships began their attack. But they were not attacking the Korthmer fleet. They were attacking the empty space around it. The humans had deployed something new, adaptive AI warfare systems. These computers could learn from every shot fired, every maneuver made, and adjust their tactics in real time. Within minutes, they had mapped the entire Korthmer formation and identified its weaknesses. "Sir, they're using coordinated fire patterns," reported the Korthmer tactical officer. "They're not shooting at our ships. They're shooting at our formations." The human ships worked together like a single organism. When one ship fired, others adjusted their positions to create interlocking fields of fire. When the Korthmer tried to respond, they found their enemies had already moved to new positions. "This is impossible," Graktul snarled. "They're too small to coordinate this well." But the humans were not just coordinating. They were learning. Every time a Korthmer ship fired, the AI systems analyzed the weapon's capabilities and developed countermeasures. Every time a Korthmer ship moved, the computers predicted its next position. On the UES Vengeance, Admiral Carter watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The red dots representing Korthmer ships were beginning to cluster together as they tried to defend against the human attack. "It was exactly what he had hoped for," Signal Captain Harrison, he ordered. "Begin ground assault." Captain Harrison's assault ships had used the space battle as cover to approach Vextai Prime. Now they dropped toward the planet's surface, their hulls glowing from atmospheric entry. The Korthmer forces on the ground looked up in confusion as human drop pods began falling like rain. "Deploy in defensive positions around the Vextai cities," Harrison ordered over the radio. "Remember, we're not here to win. We're here to learn." The first human soldiers to hit the ground were met by Korthmer warriors who expected easy prey. The aliens were 3 meters tall, with claws that could slice through armor and strength that could crush bones. They had never lost a ground battle, Sergeant. Tony Martinez landed with his squad outside the Vextai capital city. He was a veteran of urban warfare, a man who had learned to fight in the worst conditions. As his squad formed up, they could hear the sounds of battle from the city. "Contact front," called out Private Lisa Chun, raising her rifle. "Korthmer warriors, about 50 meters. The alien warriors charged, expecting to overwhelm the small human squad with their size and strength. Instead, they ran into something they had never encountered: Coordinated. Human tactics. Martinez's squad did not try to match the Korthmer strength for strength. Instead, they used their speed and intelligence. They moved in patterns that confused the aliens, using cover and crossfire to break up the charges. "They're not adapting to our tactics," Martinez reported over the radio. "They just keep charging straight at us." "Copy that," Harrison replied. "All units, the Korthmer rely on individual strength. Use team tactics to isolate and eliminate them." Across the planet, human forces began implementing the same strategy. They did not try to fight the Korthmer as individuals. They fought as teams, using their superior coordination to turn the alien strength against them. In space, the battle was also turning. The Korthmer fleet, which had seemed overwhelming at first, was being systematically destroyed by human tactics they could not understand or counter. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them," reported Gregtol aide. "The humans are predicting our every move." "How is that possible?" Gregtol demanded. "They're just primitives with primitive weapons." "I don't know, sir. But they're winning." As the first day of fighting ended, the Korthmer forces were in retreat. They had lost hundreds of ships and thousands of warriors. The humans had taken casualties too, but far fewer than anyone had expected. 3 weeks after the first battle, the Korthmer horde was beginning to understand they had made a terrible mistake. In the command ship drifting near the outer edge of Vextai space, war leader Gregtol stared at the tactical display with growing confusion and fear. "Report," he growled to his aide, a smaller Korthmer warrior named Veltek. "We have lost 47 ships in the last 3 days," Veltek reported, his voice shaking. "The humans are not fighting like any enemy we have faced." "Before, how so?" Gregtol demanded. "They do not charge us with honor. They do not test their strength against ours. They use tricks and deception. They coordinate their attacks in ways that make no sense." Gregtol's claws scraped against the metal of his command chair. For 300 years, the Korthmer had conquered every species they encountered through superior strength and numbers. The pattern was always the same. Other species would fight bravely at first, then break when faced with Korthmer fury. These humans were different. Meanwhile, on the surface of Vextai Prime, Colonel Danny Brooks was demonstrating exactly why the humans were different. His armored division had just finished destroying a Korthmer ground base using tactics that would have been impossible for any other species. "Tank units, advance to grid reference 77 Alpha, Brooks commanded over the radio. He was sitting in the command vehicle of his unit, watching multiple screens that showed the positions of every tank under his command. The human tanks moved forward in perfect coordination with Major Kim Santos aerospace fighters as the tanks engaged Korthmer ground forces. Santos aircraft provided cover from above, hitting targets that the tanks could not reach. "This is Santos to all ground units," the major's voice crackled over the radio. "We have visual on Korthmer reinforcements approaching from the north. Recommend immediate withdrawal to defensive positions." "Negative," Brooks replied. "We're not withdrawing. We're advancing." What happened next would have been suicide for any other military force. Brooks' tanks charged directly toward the Korthmer reinforcements, but they did not attack them head-on. Instead, they spread out in a complex pattern that confused the alien warriors. Sergeant Tony Martinez watched the battle from his infantry position on a hill overlooking the battlefield. His squad had been fighting alongside the tanks for weeks now, and he had learned to appreciate the way human forces work together. "Look at that," he said to Private Lisa Chun, pointing at the tanks below. "They're not trying to overpower the Korthmer, they're making them make mistakes." Chun nodded as she watched through her rifle scope. The human tanks were moving in patterns that forced the Korthmer warriors to spread out and lose their coordination. When the aliens tried to regroup, Santos fighters would strike from above, breaking up their formations. "It's like watching a chess game," Chun observed. "Except we're playing chess and they're playing checkers." The battle ended with another human victory, but this time it was different. The Korthmer forces did not just retreat. They fled in panic, abandoning their weapons and equipment. For the first time in their history, Korthmer warriors had run from a fight. Dr. Rachel Moore was watching the battle from the human command ship in orbit. She was a specialist in biological warfare, a woman who understood how to turn an enemy's biology against them. The sonic disruptors she had developed were proving devastatingly effective. The Korthmer communicate through subsonic frequencies, she explained to Admiral Carter over the video link. When we disrupt those frequencies, they lose their ability to coordinate. They become confused and frightened. Can we expand the effect? Carter asked. Already working on it, Moore replied. I'm developing a planet-wide sonic disruption field. If we can deploy it, we can cut off Korthmer communication across entire star systems. In another part of the fleet, Commander Nick Johnson was working on a different kind of disruption. His Naval Special Operations Unit had captured a Korthmer supply ship 3 days ago, and they were learning things that made even experienced military officers uncomfortable. The Korthmer do not just kill their enemies, Johnson reported to his superiors. They consume them, literally. They use captured populations as food sources during long campaigns. That explains why they never retreat, Admiral Carter replied. They cannot afford to lose a food source. There's more, Johnson continued. They have breeding colonies throughout their territory, worlds where they raise their young and produce new warriors. If we could locate those colonies, we could. Hit them where it really hurts, Carter finished. Do it. The plan that emerged from Johnson's intelligence was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of simply defending Vextai space, the humans began attacking Korthmer territory. They struck at supply lines, breeding colonies, and command centers with surgical precision. Captain Lavra Davis led one of these deep strike missions. She was a woman who specialized in rapid assault tactics, leading small teams into enemy territory to cause maximum damage. Her current target was a Korthmer breeding world called Kethmer. Remember, we're not here to conquer, she told her team as their ship approached the planet. We're here to disrupt their entire life cycle. The mission was successful beyond anyone's expectations. Davis' team did not just destroy the breeding facilities. They captured thousands of young Korthmer and transported them to human-controlled space. What they did with those captives would later shock the entire galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Jack Wilson was overseeing the most disturbing part of the human response. His job was tactical analysis, but he had discovered something that went far beyond simple military planning. The humans have been studying us, he reported to his team. All of us. Every species in the galaxy. What do you mean? Asked his assistant. A young officer named Sarah Kim. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, diplomatic missions, Wilson explained. Every interaction humanity has had with other species for the past 30 years has been intelligence gathering. They know how we fight, how we think, how we react to pressure. You're saying this was all planned? I'm saying humanity has been preparing for this moment since they first joined the galactic community, Wilson replied. The Vextai crisis was just the excuse they needed. Back on Vextai Prime, Ambassador Kreolok was beginning to understand the truth of Wilson's words. He stood in the ruins of his capital city, watching human soldiers help rebuild. But something about their efficiency made him uncomfortable. They work like they have done this before, he said to his aide, a young Vextai named Priyana. Perhaps. They have, Priyana replied. Their military coordination is perfect. Too perfect for a species that has only been in space for 30 years. Kreolok's compound eyes reflected the strange lights of human technology as he watched the soldiers work. They did not just come to help us, he realized. They came to study the Korthmer. To learn how to fight them. Is that bad? Priyana asked. I do not know, Kreolok admitted. But I am beginning to suspect that we have asked the wrong species for help. The proof of Kreolok's fears came when the first reports arrived from the captured Korthmer breeding world. The humans had not just taken the young Korthmer as prisoners. They were raising them, teaching them human values, and preparing them to fight against their own species. This is impossible, Gregtol snarled when he heard the news. No species has ever turned our young against us. The humans are not like other species, Veltak replied. They do not fight with honor, they fight to win? Then we will show them. What true Korthmer fury looks like, Gregtol declared. Signal all fleets. We will gather every warrior, every ship, every weapon we have. We will crush these humans and consume their entire species. What Gregtol did not know was that the humans were counting on exactly that response. Every battle, every victory, every tactical innovation had been designed to provoke the Korthmer into making one massive attack in the human command center. Admiral Carter watched the enemy fleet movements with satisfaction. "They're taking the bait," he said to General Walsh. "All of them?" Walsh asked. "Every ship, every warrior. They're committing everything to one final assault on human space. And when they arrive?" Carter smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "When they arrive, they will discover that we have been preparing for this moment for a very long time." The tide had turned, but the real war was just beginning. The humans had demonstrated that they could fight the Korthmer as equals. Now they were going to show the galaxy what happened when humanity decided to fight seriously. Ambassador Kreolok stood in his rebuilt office, looking out at the stars where human ships patrolled his system. He had asked for help, and humanity had answered. But as he watched the perfectly coordinated movements of the human fleet, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had saved his people, but at what cost? And more importantly, what did they plan to do next? The answer to that question would change the galaxy forever. Image. Description for Leonardo AI, a massive battlefield on an alien planet, showing human tanks in perfect formation coordinating with fighter aircraft overhead. The landscape is alien with purple vegetation and twin moons in the sky. Human tanks fire in synchronized patterns while sleek fighter jets provide air support. In the foreground, Fleet Admiral Steve Patterson stood in the command center of the UES Dominion, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around him, dozens of officers worked at stations that controlled not just his fleet, but human military operations across 17 star systems. Patterson was a man who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, though he had never expected it to come so soon. "Sir, we have confirmation," reported Captain Lavera Davis, who had recently returned from her mission to the Korthmer breeding world. "The enemy is committing everything to their final assault. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon they have." "Total numbers?" Patterson asked. 3 million ships of various sizes," Davis replied. "Approximately 200 million warriors. They're calling it the Great Devouring," Patterson nodded. The Korthmer had done exactly what human strategists had predicted. When faced with an enemy they could not understand, they had reverted to their most basic instinct, overwhelming force. "Signal all commands," Patterson ordered. Operation Final Solution is now active. In the Psychological Operations Center 3, decks below, General Kathy Miller was already implementing the most disturbing part of the human plan. She was a woman who understood how minds worked, both human and alien. Her job was to break the Korthmer will to fight before they even reached human space. "Begin broadcasting on all Korthmer frequencies," she ordered her team. "Use the language patterns we learned from the prisoners." The broadcasts that went out were unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. They were not threats or demands for surrender. They were something much worse, the voices of young Korthmer warriors who had been raised by humans. "Brothers of the Horde," came the voice of a young Korthmer who had been captured as a child, "you have been lied to. There is no honor in devouring the weak. There is no glory in consuming civilizations. The humans have shown us a better way." On the Korthmer command ship, War Leader Gregtol listened to the broadcast with growing horror. The voice was definitely Korthmer, but the words were impossible. No Korthmer had ever spoken against the Horde. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The humans have corrupted our young," Veltek replied. "They have turned them against their own species." "Then we will cleanse them along with the humans," Gregtol snarled. But his voice lacked its usual confidence. Hearing his own people speak against the Horde was shaking him in ways that no military defeat could. Meanwhile, Commander Brad Thompson was implementing another part of the human plan. His cyber warfare division had been studying Korthmer technology for months, looking for ways to turn their own systems against them. The Korthmer use a centralized command network, Thompson explained to his team. Every ship, every weapon, every communication system is connected to their main command vessels. If we can infiltrate that network, we can control their entire fleet, finished his assistant, Lieutenant Mary Jackson. Exactly, Thompson said. But we're not going to control them. We're going to make them fight each other. The cyber attack began as the Korthmer fleet approached the outer edge of human space. At first, it was subtle. Ships began receiving conflicting orders. Communication systems started broadcasting false information. Navigation computers began showing incorrect positions. "Sir, our fleet is becoming disorganized," Veltek reported to Greichtel. "Ships are receiving orders that contradict each other." "Then send the orders directly," Greichtel replied. "I did, sir." "But the ships are saying they received different orders from you." Greichel's claws extended in frustration. "That is impossible. I have only given one set of orders." What he did not know was that the human cyber warfare systems had infiltrated the Korthmer command network so completely that they could now send orders that appeared to come from Greichtel himself. The entire Korthmer fleet was receiving commands that would turn them against each other. On the planet New Geneva, in a facility that officially did not exist, Captain Pete Harrison was overseeing the most controversial part of the human operation. His team was working with the young Korthmer who had been captured from the breeding worlds. "Remember," Harrison told his team, "these are not prisoners, they are allies. We have raised them, trained them, and taught them human values. Now they are going to help us end this war?" The young Korthmer in the facility looked exactly like their warrior ancestors, but they acted completely differently. They had been taught to value cooperation over competition, peace over war, and protection over conquest. "Sir," said one of the young Korthmer, whose human name was Kevin, "we understand our mission. We will broadcast to the Horde and show them that there is another way to live. Are you sure about this?" Harrison asked. "You will be revealing yourselves to your own people. They will consider you traitors." "We are not traitors," Kevin replied. "We are evolved. The humans have shown us that strength comes from working together, not from consuming others." The broadcast that followed was the most devastating psychological weapon ever used in galactic warfare. Hundreds of young Korthmer speaking in their own language, explaining to the Horde why they had chosen to fight alongside humanity. "We are your children," they said. "We are your future, and we reject the path of destruction you have chosen. The humans have taught us that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not devouring them." The effect on the Korthmer fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Warriors who had never questioned their purpose began to doubt. Ship commanders started arguing with their superiors. Entire units refused to follow orders. "This is impossible," Greichtel roared. "Our young cannot think these thoughts. They are Korthmer, they are warriors." "Perhaps," Veltek said quietly, "that is the problem." Lieutenant Commander Jack Wilson was monitoring the situation from his analysis station aboard the UES Dominion. His job was to track the effectiveness of the human psychological operations, but what he was seeing went beyond anything he had expected. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Patterson, "the Korthmer fleet is beginning to break apart. Not just tactically, but psychologically. We're seeing mass desertions, ship-to-ship combat, and complete breakdown of command structure." "Casualties?" Patterson asked. "Minimal on our side," Wilson replied. "The Korthmer are inflicting most of the damage on themselves." Patterson nodded grimly. This was exactly what the human planners had hoped for. The Korthmer horde was not just being defeated. It was being destroyed from within. In the depths of space, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen was tearing itself apart. Ships that had fought together for centuries were now firing on each other. Warriors who had been raised from birth to serve the Horde were abandoning their posts. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from over 1,000 Korthmer ships." reported Communications Officer Sarah Kim. Accepted, Patterson replied. Direct them to the processing stations. The processing stations were another part of the human plan that the galaxy would later find disturbing. They were not prison camps or execution facilities. They were re-education centers where captured Korthmer were taught human values and integrated into human society. We're not trying to destroy the Korthmer, Patterson explained to his officers. We're trying to save them from themselves. Dr. Rachel Moore was overseeing the biological aspects of the integration program. Her work with sonic disruptors had evolved into something much more sophisticated, a way to rewire Korthmer brain patterns to remove their aggressive instincts. The Korthmer are not evil, she explained to her team. They are simply programmed for aggression by millions of years of evolution. We can change that programming. Is that ethical? Asked her assistant, Dr. Mike Chun. Is it ethical to let them continue consuming entire civilizations? Moore replied. We're giving them a choice they never had before, the choice to be something other than predators. As the Korthmer fleet continued to destroy itself, reports began reaching the Galactic Council. The news was almost impossible to believe. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was being eliminated not by superior firepower, but by superior psychology. They turned the Korthmer against themselves, reported Ambassador Thexan to the Emergency Council session. Without firing a single shot, the humans have destroyed the most powerful military force in galactic history. How? Asked Chairman Zorthek. By showing them a better way to live, Thexan replied. By proving that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Ambassador Kreolok listened to the reports with growing unease. The humans had saved his people, but the methods they had used were terrifying in their efficiency. They had not just defeated the Korthmer, they had reprogrammed them. What happens now? He asked Ambassador Jake Morrison, who had arrived for the emergency session. Morrison's expression was calm, but his eyes held something that made Kreolok uncomfortable. Now we help the galaxy understand what peace really means. And if someone refuses that help? Morrison's smile was pleasant, but it did not reach his eyes. Then we help them understand why that would be a mistake. The Great Devouring had ended not with the destruction of the Korthmer, but with their transformation. The galaxy's greatest predators had become humanity's greatest allies. And in the process, humanity had demonstrated something that made every other species very nervous. 6 months after the Great Devouring ended, the galaxy looked very different. President Helen Clark sat in her office on Earth, reviewing reports from across known space. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much politics. Today, she was preparing to address the Galactic Council about humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Madam President, said her aide, Director Sam Taylor, the Council is ready for your transmission. Taylor was the head of intelligence operations, a man who knew secrets that could topple governments. He had been instrumental in planning humanity's response to the Korthmer crisis, and now he was helping to shape what came next. Are our forces in position? Clark asked. Admiral Ross has established patrol stations in 47 star systems, Taylor replied. General Lewis has peacekeeping bases operational in 32 systems. We now have a military presence in every major trade route in the galaxy, Clark nodded. The transformation had been faster than anyone had expected. What had begun as a rescue mission for the Vextai had become something much larger. Humanity now had the strongest military force in galactic history, and they were using it to reshape civilization itself. In the Galactic Council chamber, the same hall where Ambassador Kreolok had once pleaded for help, the mood was very different. The ambassadors sat quietly, waiting for the human president to speak. Many of them looked nervous. They had all seen what happened to the Korthmer, and they understood the implications. Fellow members of the galactic community, President Clark began, her image appearing on screens throughout the chamber. 6 months ago, you witnessed humanity's response to a crisis. Today, I want to explain what that response means for our shared future. Ambassador Kreolok shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His people had been saved, but at a cost he was still trying to understand. The Vextai homeworld was now protected by human military bases, and human advisors were helping to rebuild their civilization. It was help they desperately needed, but it came with conditions. The Korthmer horde represented a fundamental problem. With our galactic civilization, Clark continued, for too long we have accepted that some species must prey upon others. We have allowed violence to be the final arbiter of disputes. This ends now. Chairman Zorthak's tail twitched nervously. He had been leader of the council for over a century, but he had never felt so powerless. What exactly are you proposing, President Clark? I am proposing a new order, Clark replied. An order where conflicts are resolved through dialogue, not warfare. Where trade routes are protected by dedicated forces. Where no species lives in fear of being consumed by another. It sounded reasonable, even noble. But the ambassadors in the chamber understood the reality behind the words. Humanity was not proposing this new order. They were imposing it, Admiral. Kevin Ross was already implementing the new system from his command ship in the Altair sector. He was a veteran of the Korthmer conflict, a man who had seen firsthand what human military coordination could accomplish. Now he commanded the Galactic Patrol, a force that was officially international but practically human. Sir, we have a situation in the Centauri system, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Carol Wright. The Thermal Empire and the Crystalline Collective are having a trade dispute. Both sides are mobilizing their fleets. Send a patrol squadron, Ross ordered. Make it clear that any military action will be met with immediate intervention. The patrol squadron that arrived in the Centauri system consisted of 12 human ships with multinational crews. But the crews were trained by humans, used human tactics, and followed human rules of engagement. The message was clear: disputes would be resolved the human way, or not at all. Ambassador Thaksan of the Crystalline Collective received the patrol's message with a mixture of relief and concern. The Thermal Empire had been threatening to blockade crystalline trade routes, but the presence of human ships made such action impossible. They stopped a war before it could begin, Thaksan reported to his government. But they also made it clear that we have no choice in how disputes are resolved. General Frank Lewis was establishing the same pattern on dozens of worlds. His peacekeeping forces were welcome wherever they went, because they brought stability and protection. But they also brought human laws, human customs, and human expectations. The key is to make them want our help, Lewis explained to his staff. During a briefing on the former Korthmer world of Geftar, we do not conquer, we protect, we do not rule, we guide. The difference was subtle but important. The former Korthmer colonies were now human protectorates, but their populations genuinely supported human presence. The integration programs had been so successful that many former Korthmer warriors now served in human military units. Sir, said Colonel Eric Johnson, Lewis's chief of staff, we have reports that some species are beginning to request human protection voluntarily. Which species? Lewis asked. The Aquatic Alliance has asked for patrol coverage of their shipping lanes. The Voidwalkers want peacekeeping forces stationed on their border worlds. Even the Altarian Federation is considering a mutual defense treaty, Lewis smiled. This was exactly what human planners had hoped for. The galaxy was voluntarily accepting human protection because the alternative was chaos. Ambassador Julie Green was managing the diplomatic aspects of the new order from her office on the council station. She was a woman who understood how to make demands sound like offers and how to make surrender feel like victory. We are not asking anyone to give up their sovereignty, she explained to a group of concerned ambassadors. We are simply offering to help maintain the peace that we all want. But your help comes with conditions, observed Ambassador Veltara of the Altarian Federation. Of course, Green replied. We cannot protect trade routes if species continue to engage in predatory practices. We cannot maintain peace if governments continue to solve problems through violence. These are reasonable expectations. The conditions were indeed reasonable, but they were also comprehensive. Species that accepted human protection had to agree to human-mediated dispute resolution, human-supervised trade agreements, and human-approved military activities. It was a system that made rebellion not just difficult but pointless. Director Taylor was overseeing the intelligence network that made the new order possible. His agents were embedded in every major government, every military organization, and every trade consortium in the galaxy. They provided information that allowed humanity to predict and prevent conflicts before they started. We know what every species is thinking before they think it, Taylor reported to President Clark. Our psychological profiling systems can predict political instability months in advance. We can prevent wars that have not even been planned yet. And if a species refuses our help, Clark asked, then we help them understand why that would be a mistake, Taylor replied. We have files on every species' vulnerabilities. Economic, military, psychological. We can apply pressure in ways that do not look like pressure. The system worked because it was designed to be invisible. Species that cooperated with human guidance prospered. Those that resisted found themselves facing economic problems, social unrest, and military threats from other species. The pressure was always indirect, always deniable, but always effective. Ambassador Kreolok was beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened. He sat in his rebuilt office on Vextai Prime, looking out at the human military base that protected his world. The base was a symbol of safety, but it was also a reminder of who really controlled his people's fate. We asked for help, he said to his aide, Priyana, and they gave us exactly what we asked for. Are you saying we made a mistake? Priyana asked. I am saying we did not understand what we were asking for, Kreolok replied. We thought we were asking for military assistance. We were actually asking to become part of something much larger. The truth was that humanity had been planning this transformation for decades. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic mission had been designed to prepare for this moment. The Korthmer crisis had simply provided the excuse. To implement a plan that had been ready for years. In the council chamber, the final vote was taking place. The resolution was simple. The galaxy would accept human leadership in maintaining peace and security. The vote was unanimous, but nobody was happy about it. We have no choice, Chairman Zorthek said quietly to his aide. They have demonstrated that they can destroy any enemy, integrate any population, and control any situation. Resistance is not just futile, it is impossible. President Clark watched the vote with satisfaction. The galaxy had officially accepted what was already reality. Human dominance was not just military, it was total. The age of chaos is over, she announced. The age of peace has begun. But as the ambassadors filed out of the chamber, many of them were asking the same question. Was this really peace, or was it just a very sophisticated form of conquest? Ambassador Kreolok met with other species representatives in a private room after the session. They all had the same concern. How do we deal with humanity now? Asked Ambassador Veltara. We do not, Kreolok replied. We adapt. We learn to live in their world, by their rules, under their protection. Because the alternative is to become like the Korthmer.